Hello, my dear contemporaries, I am Reznikov Vladimir, 69 years old, an engineer by education, an Israeli citizen, a pensioner. I appeal to businessmen, scientists, physicists, engineers, researchers, scientific laboratories and people of science. I propose to conduct a direct experiment to confirm my hypothesis of discrete motion of physical bodies, which is a modern analogy of the famous experiment with Isaac Newton's cart. One of the conclusions of this experiment is that the speed of the cart continuously increases with time. But maybe Newton was wrong and the speed of the cart increases discretely. The cost of the experiment should not exceed $2.5 million. But believe me, it's worth it both scientifically and practically. Possible applications of the hypothesis are two practical implications of the hypothesis. Moreover, the first conclusion, for each mass of a body moving under the action of a force, there is its own optimal effective acceleration, we can already apply today to save spacecraft fuel when adjusting the orbit. And the second conclusion, the discreteness frequency of the motion of physical bodies is in the range of approximately 500 GHz. It has a promising application, since it requires the creation of a gravitational wave generator of the same frequency, which is the starting point for creating a gravitational engine. This hypothesis, as a theoretical study, I have been doing all my conscious life, and it was not born from scratch. It is based on ancient philosophy. Philosopher Zeno of Elea, 5th century BC, a student of Parmenides and a supporter of the philosophical doctrine of the integrity of the world and, of course, the continuity of movement. He created aporias, unsolvable paradoxes, with the help of which he tried to prove the validity of this doctrine by the method of contradiction. For example, the aporia dichotomy considers movement, consisting of separate moments in which there is no movement, which means that there is no movement at all, which proves the continuity of the motion. But for science, Zeno of Elea was the first to pose the question, is the motion discrete or continuous? The views of Epicurus are very close to my hypothesis. The ancient Roman philosopher Alexander Aphrodite, 2 to 3 century AD, a supporter of Epicurus, wrote, "A moving body moves throughout the space, consisting of indivisible parts, and on each of its indivisible parts there are no parts of the movement, but only the result of the movement." A little about my hypothesis and in more detail about the practical conclusions from it. Moment 1. The force F acts on the body M. The own gravitational field of the body MOGF slows down the movement of the body, since it has not yet reacted to the force F and the body is deformed by a very small amount x, approximately 10⁻⁻23 meters. At the same time, it remains in the old state of motion at the old speed. Moment 2. The body's own gravitational field m reacted to the force F. The force F disappears because there is no resistance to OGF, but the face P of the body, creator of the force F, remains and the body is deformed in the direction of motion. In this case, the body passes into a new state of motion, into a new speed. Moments 1 and 2 are the quantum of motion of the body. And since this process is periodic, the motion of the body is quantum discrete in nature. Each quantum of the motion is characterized by elementary speed, period, elementary path, elementary elastic deformation and redeformation of the body. The new experiment will include 1. Instead of a cart with a dropper, a polished ball rolling along an inclined spiral glass tube in vacuum and a Michelson interferometer built on a laser and a reference mirror. The interference signal contains information about the displacement of the ball surface relative to the reference mirror. It should be noted that even with a rough estimate, the beam of light from the laser moves faster than the ball rolling through the glass tube by 8 orders of magnitude. 2. Instead of a ruler, an interferometer controller with a sampling rate of 0.1 THz and a resolution of 50 pm. 3. Instead of a stopwatch, a clock generator with a pulse frequency of 1 THz. The main principle of experimentation: if the neighboring results of counting pulses from the clock generator per one step, 50 pm, of pulses from the interferometer through the controller are equal, then the movement of the ball is discrete, atomic. Undoubtedly, the reconstruction of the picoscale V2 interferometer is a very complex research process and will require large financial investments. But I repeat, it's worth it. A possible confirmation of the hypothesis of discrete motion of physical bodies and possible applications of the hypothesis are two practical conclusions from the hypothesis. So, in more detail about these conclusions. First conclusion: from my hypothesis it follows that for each body mass there is an optimal acceleration. Look at the table of dependence of optimal accelerations for various masses. The table shows that for a spacecraft with a mass from 200 to 3000 tons, there is an optimal acceleration of approximately 7.4 meters per square second. Let's use this acceleration for optimal fuel consumption when adjusting the spacecraft's orbit, for example, for docking with a space station. To simplify, consider a spacecraft with a pulsed jet engine. The supply of fuel to the combustion chamber and, accordingly, The thrust of this engine is regulated in accordance with the program according to the algorithm. The mass of the supplied fuel for the nth pulsation is recorded by the sensor, and this value is sent to the onboard computer. The computer corrects the thrust force of the jet engine for the next pulsation in accordance with the specified algorithm, taking into account the optimal acceleration of the spacecraft. Second conclusion: I repeat that the discreteness frequency of motion of physical bodies is approximately 500 GHz. If we create a generator of gravitational waves of the same frequency, then it will be possible to move physical bodies, that is, to create a gravitational engine. To make it clear, if a generator of high-frequency gravitational waves is installed in the mDrive engine of engineer Scheuer instead of a magnetron, then the mysterious thrust of this engine will possibly be realized. But this is a promising conclusion from the hypothesis, since so far we are talking about the creation of high-frequency gravitational wave detectors. I read an internet post about the registration of high-frequency gravitational waves by Michael Tuber's group from the University of Western Australia in Perth. From my email correspondence with Michael Tuber, it appears that a 50 GHz high-frequency gravitational wave detector will be built in the near future and that this will be a great achievement. Interested in the further promotion of this hypothesis? Please contact me at this address. You can find publications with a detailed description of the experiment on the Internet.